Hello and welcome to Harvest to You. I'm Pastor Marc, and it is a blessing to have you with us today. Listen, before we start the sermon, I want you to know about harvesttoyou.org. This is a space where you can find additional resources like sermons and devotionals, even a book I recently wrote. It's also a space where you can request prayer. I know that life can be hard, even lonely sometimes, and we would love to come alongside you with resources, equipping, and prayer for your life. Head on over to harvesttoyou.org. We'll go to Nehemiah chapter number 6, Nehemiah 6. If you are new, maybe Easter Sunday was your first Sunday, or perhaps you're just new over the last couple weeks, we have been working through the book of Nehemiah verse by verse, and I just want to catch you up very briefly. We're at the halfway point, and Nehemiah is this Jewish guy who lived in Persia, and he served in the palace there, and he had this burden that God put on his heart to go back to Jerusalem, to his hometown in Judah, and to rebuild the city because the walls and the gates were in shambles. And he asked for time off of work, and he asked for resources, and the Persian government gave it to him, gave him an army, gave him resources, gave him time off, and he rolled into town with an entourage, and everyone thought, what is this guy doing here, rolling in with all this lumber and all this stuff? And Nehemiah begins to lead the people and tell them, I'm here to rebuild the gates and the wall and to reestablish the city. And for 4 chapters now, it has been this battle where he is working to accomplish this task that God has put on his heart, and people are fighting him, and people are discouraging him, people are trying to kill him, and it's just him staying very faithful and very focused. And we finally reach a moment in verse number 15. We last left off in verse 14. In verse 15, we finally reach this moment, and it's a moment that we can relate to on some level. The moment where you've set out to accomplish something that feels visionary, that feels big, that feels hard, and you finally get to accomplish it, right? That moment where you're training all off season and all the practices to win the championship, and then you're finally hoisting the trophy, and you feel this sense of pride and accomplishment. Or that moment where you've been aiming for years to walk across that stage and get your college diploma, and it finally comes to fruition. Or that moment where you've been dreaming of buying the land and building the house, and you've invested and planned and selected the tile and the floors and all this stuff, and you finally have your occupancy permit, and you can move in and you sleep your first night in your new house that you've built. Those sorts of moments are massive. And this is a moment that happens for Nehemiah here in verse number 15. Here it is. So the wall was finished. What they've been aiming at for so long is finished. It's been 6 months in the making. They were physically constructing, though, for on the 25th day of the month, 52 days. So let's be honest, this is a moment that matters. This is something that Nehemiah has had to persevere for and towards. And this is something that you know, if you have something of significance that you're trying to accomplish in your own life, that people will question you or distractions will pull at you. There will be fatigue. There will be naysayers, and you have to keep going. And he does. He keeps going. He stays focused. And verse 16, listen to this. It's beautiful. It came to pass that when our enemies heard thereof, and all the heathen that were about us saw these things, they were first much cast down in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was wrought of our God. What a beautiful verse. The enemies that have been trying to discourage Nehemiah and cast him down and move him off mission, now they are the ones that are cast down. They are the ones that are discouraged. His steady hand and his faithfulness and God showing up and in doing something has both disheartened them, and they can only say, this must have been of God. Now, they're not ready to join the team. They're not ready to celebrate that it was of God. But their answer is that this was not humanly possible. This must have been of God. Something has happened here that we can't explain strictly in human terms. That God has done something despite our best efforts to stop it. And we've got to at least give him some credit here. There's a lesson to be learned here and a principle that you can't afford to miss, that the work of God should always be done in such a way where people have to explain it in relationship to God. Where they have to, at some level, step back and say that's not just a byproduct of human imagination. That's not just planning and preparation and resource allocation and hard work. It's more than that. God is in the middle of that somewhere, right? This is true of the work of God in Nehemiah's day. This is true of the work of God in Moses' day as he leads people out of Egypt in the Exodus. This is true of any church that is wanting to do something for God. There should be a component where people look and say, that's not just people and sacrifice and effort, but I see God in the middle of that. That should be true. That should be true even of our own lives. That our lives should be lived in such a way where our aim is that people would say, I can't fully explain them other than there's a God component. There's something about them, the way that they talk, the way that they act, the way that they think, the way that they prioritize, that there's something about them that it just, I know a lot of people, and it doesn't seem to register as just a people thing. This registers as something other than just people. There must be a God thing here. I was delighted to hear in this last week from our youth pastor, Pastor Matt, that he had a moment in his own family that was like this. He had a cousin that called him, or texted him first, I think, and said, I need to be saved. If you know Pastor Matt, you know that their family has had a lot of tragedy and grief over the last couple of years. His dad died tragically in a car accident. His mom passed away last month, and then in the same week, his mom's brother, his uncle, was murdered. And his cousin has been with them. They've been at funerals together. Matt performed and officiated the funeral for his uncle. And over the last couple of weeks, his cousin, who's in the middle of grief, and them in the middle of grief, has watched the family. And Matt called him and he said, I've just seen you and I've seen your sisters. I've seen you handle this grief and this stress and this time in a way that I'm unable to handle it. I don't know how you're doing it. And I look and I think there must be God in that. And if that's God and you're telling me I need to get saved, I want to get saved. I want what you got. Right? Our lives should be lived in such a way where there's a testimony that is being told and people can only explain it because of God. This is a beautiful moment. This is the goal of a work of God, is that people would say God is in that. That's not just people. And there's lots of ingredients that make this possible. There's a leadership ingredient. You know, there's Nehemiah who's leading this, and this is not going to happen apart from God, but it's also not going to happen apart from this man, and God does this. All of the works of God that you can look in the Bible for, or even modern history for, what you'll find is that God raises up a leader or leaders to be able to do that. That's Moses in the Exodus, that's Joshua in the Promised Land, that's David and Solomon in unifying a kingdom, that is the apostles in the early church, that is pastors with churches today. God's work is always intended to have leaders that are there, that are willing to lead and to trust him and to tell people, faith forward, let's go. Like that's an absolutely critical component, and Nehemiah's leading. You also find that there is faithfulness, that there is this clear-headed resoluteness about Nehemiah, that he is locked and loaded, that he's going to do this. Come hell or high water, I am going to do this with the help of an almighty God. You also find there's unity, that the people begin to band together and work shoulder to shoulder, or even at times defend and fight shoulder to shoulder, and they're unified. A unified people, that's powerful. It's powerful when people have unity. It's powerful when a sports team is unified and on the same page and working together collectively. It's powerful when unbelievers are unified. Think about the Tower of Babel. Something was happening there and they were together, and God said, I've got to cause disunity here. I've got to stop this. So different languages come because their unity was doing something that was a big deal. Think about what Jesus' prayer was for his followers, for his believers. John 17, where he prays for glory and he prays for holy, but the core of that prayer is for unity. Where Jesus stops and he prays for his disciples, and he also prays for anyone who would put their faith in him in the future. And his prayer is that they would be one.
Father, just like you and I are one, as thou art in me and I in thee, that they also may be one in us. Why? That the world may believe that thou hast sent me. I am praying that there's a unity amongst my people that is so profound that it would point to me, that they would see me in that there would be some sort of glory that happens because of that. And this is what happens in Nehemiah. There's a strong leader, and there's faithfulness, and there's unity in the people, and all of a sudden God's getting glory all over the place, and people are saying, this is a God thing. But what's interesting about this moment is that you would think, like, all right, the book of Nehemiah is about to end. 6 chapters. What do we got? One more chapter? Maybe 7 chapters total? No. We're at the halfway point. Because the walls are finished, but the war is going to continue. Here it is, verse number 17. Moreover, in those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters unto Tobiah. If you've been with us, you know Tobiah is not the good guy. And the letters of Tobiah came to them. So there's some people that are core leaders, nobles in Judah, that are corresponding with Nehemiah. They're chit-chatting and texting, and they're on the phone all the time. Why? Well, there were many in Judah that were sworn to him because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Ara, and his son Johanan had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Bechariah. You say, what do those names mean, right? I would love for you to have my job and read that verse. I should have outsourced this portion of the sermon. What this means is that Tobiah has deep relational connections. The people that were just mentioned there was the high priest family. And then you have, at the end of the verse, Meshullam. He was someone who was mentioned in chapter 4 as a key worker inside of the work, working alongside Nehemiah. So Tobiah has deep connections and family ties to the high priest, also to nobles and key workers that are working alongside Nehemiah. He has insider information. And so what do? Number 1, verse 19, they reported his good deeds before me. And number 2, they uttered my words to him. These people are on one hand constantly coming to me and saying, listen, Tobiah is a good dude. He just got mixed up with the wrong crowd. He's not really that close with Sanballat. Trust us. His heart's in the right place. He's misunderstood. You should give him a chance. He's really for us. He wants what's best. And they're uttering my words to him. They're little spies on the inside that are constantly taking the meetings and the strategy, and things have changed. They've got weapons now. They're prepared. They know that an attack's coming. They're constantly reporting back to him what's happening, thinking that this guy is somehow going to help them or be a good guy, and they've been fooled by Tobiah feigning that he is actually on the Lord's side and on the team, but Tobiah sent letters to put me in fear. Nehemiah had sniffed this dude out. He knew what he was. He knew what he was about. He knew that he was not there to help. But Tobiah has convinced a small segment of popular, powerful people inside of the city that he, in fact, is a good guy. Now, what's happening here? What's happening is what has been happening. It's just in a different form. There's been all this opposition on the outside of people saying, come with us, Nehemiah, meet with us, stop your work, come down from the wall, come to the temple, we're going to try to kill you. Like, all this is happening to try to stop him. This is the same intention, but it's a different method. The method is on the inside. It's this tension internally where people are whispering in corners. Tobiah is trying to divide their loyalties. He's trying to split them, and he's trying to cause commotion for Nehemiah and to put him in fear. Now, anyone who's served in leadership at any capacity, especially if you've served inside of like a church capacity or something that would be pointed at glory to God, maybe even a nonprofit for that matter, you know this tension. I know a lot of churches inside of America that have folded, closed their doors, split, fallen on terrible times. I cannot think of one that was because of external pressure. Because the government put the screws to them, because people took their protest signs and stood on the sidewalk and tried to stop them, because they blew up the church or they persecuted them. I can't think of one that closed their doors because of the outside, but I can tell you a lot of them that closed their doors because of what happened on the inside. Because of this Tobiah stuff, of whispers and prayer requests that end up being gossip and slander that aren't anywhere close to prayer requests. I think that our church is pretty good on this front. It's a pretty unified bunch. It's a pretty loyal bunch. We've been around for over 40 years, and I don't think we've ever come anywhere close to a church split. I think you guys get a lot of credit for this stuff and being good at saying, like, listen, don't talk to me about that. Talk to them. Your problem's with them. I don't want to hear it. Don't use my ears as a garbage can. Like, I think you're pretty good at this, but this stuff happens. This wasn't just Nehemiah's day. This is as old as Satan. Quiet conversations and competing agendas and divided loyalties and trying to snake through the inside. Tobiahs do exist, and oftentimes they fool a lot of people. They fool people into thinking that they're good, and people are coming and say, well, don't you know, like really they're just misunderstood. They're well-intentioned. They have the best for the church at heart, or they have the best for their family at heart, but meanwhile, they have no intention to do anything good or wholesome or helpful. And Nehemiah is able to discern this, and he doesn't quite extinguish it, but he's at least able to know what it is and call a spade, and say, I'm not having any of that. The wall's done, but the opposition of the enemy is not done. And honestly, the work's not done. We're at the halfway point of Nehemiah. Up until this point, it's been strong walls. Strong walls, gates, walls, gates. It's been rebuilding the walls. You know what the back half of Nehemiah is going to be? I'll give you a hint. You can look on your little handout. It's like right on the front. It's all about strong hearts. There's a major shift that's about to happen in this book that you're going to realize that Nehemiah wasn't there to build walls. He was, but that was a means to an end. It wasn't the end. Gates were a means to an end. The end was not walls, and the end was not gates. The end was hearts. The end was getting worship reestablished, getting the temple regoing, getting people's hearts realigned to an almighty God, getting the book of the law read again, getting people in lockstep with God and what he wanted in his word, because there was a reason the walls were torn down and the gates were burned in the first place. It was because the people disregarded and disobeyed what God wanted and what God had clearly said, and God punished them for it. And Nehemiah's goal is not to give them strong walls and strong gates again so they can go do whatever they want and just have Mardi Gras and spring break inside of the city. That's not his goal. His goal is to see them align with God and say, let's get our hearts right, but he needed the gates and the walls first, and he's about to shift into trying to get the people to understand revival and where God wants their hearts. And he begins this in chapter number 7. You find in chapter number 7, verse number 1, that things are growing, things are changing, and it's requiring Nehemiah to change. Here it is, verse number 1. It came to pass, when the wall was built, and I had set up the doors, and I set up the porters and the singers, and the Levites were appointed. The porters are gatekeepers, generally the temple gates, although they could be used for the external gates as well. The singers and the Levites are established for worship. Then verse number 2, I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah. Hananiah was a very common Jewish name. If you remember, Hananiah was one of the 3 Hebrew boys that were thrown into the fiery furnace. We oftentimes know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but their Hebrew names, one of them was Hananiah. Not the same one here, just a common name. But there's this guy Hananiah, and he was the ruler of the palace. He was like the captain of the guard sort of person. I gave them charge over Jerusalem. Why? He was a faithful man, and he feared God above many. Verse 3, I said to them, let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun be hot. People debate what that means. I think it's very simple. I think it means they weren't 24/7. We're not going to have people traipsing in and out all the time. We're going to shut it down at night, and we're not going to open first thing in the morning as soon as there's a little bit of daylight. This isn't a sunrise service over here. We're going to wait till the sun gets hot, it's up, the day is fully established, like 10 a.m. You can open the gates, and then people can come in. And while they stand by, shut the doors, bar them. And I want you to appoint watches of the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Go find some people that are living in Jerusalem, and I want you to make them watches. And I want everyone on his watch and everyone to be over against his house, okay? If they live on the east side of town, don't give them a watch on the west side, all right? Set up some neighborhood watches. We need that little neighborhood to have a watch. We need that neighborhood to have a watch. We need that one. And you two guys, I'm delegating to you. I need you to go find some trustworthy people, and I need you to establish a schedule and get the rhythm. And please go make sure that the gates are open at the appropriate times, and go get it, boys. Verse number 4, now the city was large and great, but the people were few therein, and the houses were not builded. Now what is happening here? What is happening is a major shift in the text. Up until this point, Nehemiah has been the singular choke point for everything that's happened. Resources, because of him. Passport and letters and permission from the Persian government, because of him. Rallying the people to get to the task, because of him. Making the decisions on if we need to have a trowel in one hand and a spear on the other hand, and who's working, who's not working, because of him. All of it's flowing through him. And he realizes we're established now. We're now expanding. We got to build some houses. Verse 4, they had a housing crisis. We need people back in the city. We got the walls and gates. We don't have anywhere to live. We're going to have to build this out. We're going to need some infrastructure. We're going to have to get the worship established again. And we're going to need some Levites and some singers. And there's all this complexity now that has gone from a singular point of focus of walls and gates to the city at large and creating a holistic place for people. And Nehemiah understands intuitively, or perhaps it wasn't intuitive, perhaps it was just the Spirit of God, but he understands at some level, I got to start delegating. I need some help. Now, he makes his qualification for good leaders, if you notice in verse number 2, that they needed to have character. Right? I'm looking for people who fear God above everybody else. I'm looking for people who fear God and for honor, who want to honor God. This has always been God's standard for leadership for his people. Those who want to honor him and serve him and love him. Character is always above competency, even in the church. I'm looking for this, and he finds this in his brother. He finds this in a captain of the guard, and then he trusts them to go get the job done. He gives them some directives, high level. Gates aren't going to be open 24/7. Make sure they're barred. We need some neighborhood watches. But he sends them to go do the task because he knows he's going to bottleneck this. He understands what Moses failed to understand. Remember when Moses was leading the children of Israel, and he was pulling his hair out. And I mean, he was wearing thin. And his father-in-law came to him and was like, Moses, you got to get an org chart, buddy. You can't do it all. You're taking every request and every person, and you've got to create some sort of system and structure and some sort of schedule here where things can funnel up to you, but that doesn't all come to you. You're going to need some help here. You've got to delegate some of this, right? A strong leader doesn't mean that they do everything. Moses had to find this out the hard way. Nehemiah intuits it, but he begins to lean on people and understanding that growth means different things. Now, this may not mean very much to you. It may, I don't know, but it meant a lot to me. This was the one part of the text that like screamed at me as I'm reading through this, because when you're leading, or even in a church context, over the last couple of years, I've had to ask myself continually, what is it that I need to hang on to? What is it that I need to give away? What is it as a school grows, as a church grows? Where are the places where I'm best utilized and that demands my time and my attention? What are the things that I have to give away? And that's not easy to do. Like, I'm envious that Nehemiah was able to execute this so flawlessly and quickly. But that's a necessity for like you and your business as your business grows. This is a necessity in a home. God intended a home to be led by the husband, by the man, but for it to be 2 barrels in a double barrel shotgun with a husband and a wife, and for parenting to be mom and dad. And hats off to all of you single moms or dads who are basically trying to wear both hats and do both jobs, because that is not easy. And we want to be here and love you and support you and pray for you and try to give you a bunch of spiritual aunts and uncles to help with your kids. But a home is intended to be shared responsibility because one person's not intended to do it all. They're supposed to be mom and dad, right? And oftentimes mom and dad complement each other. Most homes, there's one comedian and court jester and then one cop disciplinarian. Very rarely do I meet a home that has 2 court jesters or 2 cops. It's normally one of each. And you play off each other, and you need each other, and someone has to take all of the doctor's appointments and health stuff, and someone else has to take all the sports scheduling and all of that sort of stuff, and you have to divide and conquer. It's necessary. This is necessary in life and families. It's necessary in churches. To be completely honest, I'm so thankful for so many people that are around me, like in leading a church, that are other leaders beside me, like linking arms. I'm so grateful for our pastoral team. I did youth ministry for years. I would organize a youth activity, and I could go have a ball. I could have a great time. But I'm glad I don't have to anymore, to tell you the truth. I'm glad Pastor Matt does it, and that's his responsibility. I could sit in the hospital room with you for 2 hours and talk to you, and I would have a good time. I really would. But I'm so grateful for a Pastor Joe who does the lion's share of that and will be there and call and text and reach out and take the maladies and the infirmities and the hospital visitation and own that piece of the puzzle so that I can spend time and attention somewhere else. Like I'm so grateful for teams. I'm grateful for group leaders who will be neighborhood watch leaders of sorts, who will say, I'll take this little section of the church community and I'll be on watch for their souls. I'll love them. I'll pray for them. I'll guide them. I'll help them. I'll teach them. Like that's necessary. It's necessary to have a distribution of leadership of sorts as things continue to grow. And Nehemiah understood this. He understood that he needed some help. And he passes it down. And then he begins to take inventory. This is the part of the text that I knew was coming. And I'm reading this and I'm prepping for this and I'm like, how in the world are we going to preach through 70 verses of names? That's what's coming up. The chapter's long and it's a whole lot of names. And I'm thinking, and finally I get to this week and I'm like, I think that here's a valid lesson from this. I'm not going to read every name to you. It'll be great devotional time if you need it. You can read it this week. But Nehemiah begins to steward both the people and the things. Verse number 5 hits, and they begin to take inventory of the people that had come back to Jerusalem. This is an almost identical list to Ezra chapter number 2. And they begin to list the people, and they categorize them in different buckets. So some of them are by their ancestors, some of them are from the towns that they grew up in, some of them are priests, some of them are Levites, some of them are descendants of Solomon. There's all these kind of different buckets of people. But from verse 5 to verse 67 is people, 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 people. It's kind of like the book of Numbers. They're just counting them all up and taking inventory of all the people. And you get to the end of it, and it's like almost 50,000 people. Nehemiah is the governor, and he's responsible to lead 50,000 people that are there in Jerusalem. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. Then you get to verse number 68, and they start to list the stuff. They begin to list how many horses they have, and camels they have, and donkeys they have, and mules, and they begin to list the stuff. And then what's interesting in verse number 70, they take up some sort of offering for the temple. You'll see this play out as the book goes on. We don't have a lot about how they took up the offering, how much prep time was there. Was this 1 day, 1 week, 1 month? How long did this take? What was the marketing strategy for it? We don't know. But people begin to give, and here it is in verse 70. I thought this was so interesting. I'd never noticed this before. Some of the chief fathers gave into the work, and the Tershatha. And you say, who or what's a Tershatha? Well, next week, chapter 8, you'll see, it'll say very plainly, the Tershatha is Nehemiah. It's literally what it says. Tershatha is a Persian word for governor. That's all it means. The governor, Nehemiah, he gave to the treasury 1,000 drams of gold. And if you think that sounds like a lot, you would be accurate. 50 basins, which is also a ton. 530 priests' garments. Some of the chief fathers, some of the real leaders, they gave into the treasury of the work 20,000 drams of gold, 2,200 pounds of silver. Verse 72, the rest of the people, they gave 20,000 drams of gold, 2,000 pounds of silver, 7 priest garments. Now, I would love to talk about drams and what a drachma is, and really we could have a whole lesson on that, but I'm going to try to make it really simple for you. What's happening is an offering specifically for the temple because they want to get the temple back fired up and they want to get the worship established again. It's a church offering. what was interesting to me is that it's basically split into thirds. If you actually try to put what's given into present day value, what you have is that there was one big lead donor by the name of Nehemiah, the sacrificial leader, who gives basically a third of the offering all by himself. Then you have this small group of leaders and influential people who give a third themselves. And then you have all the rest of the people, like 49,500 of them, who combine for a third, which is very stereotypical of like any offering that's ever been done in God's work or churches. It's never equal gifts, it's equal sacrifice. There's some people who they give a little, but it's a huge sacrifice for them because of their financial status and situation, and it all combines for something. Then there's some others who give larger gifts because they can. Then oftentimes there's some one or two who can really give a sizable gift, and this happens. It's broken down for us this way. It tells us in no uncertain terms. But they all come together and make up this great offering, and what's happening is it's inventory. You're getting all these numbers, all the numbers of this family and that family, and how many camels and how many priestly garments, how many of this. And it's obvious that they're taking inventory and very carefully calculating both the people and the stuff. And that Nehemiah is doing his best as a leader to steward both the people and know who he's supposed to steward. If you read the chapter, you get at the end of the people list and you find there's some people that say, I'm not supposed to steward you. You're telling me that you're like of our tribe and that you have family history and ties, but I can't prove any of that, and you're not mine to steward. He's trying to figure out who am I responsible for and what am I responsible for, and he's taking both of them very seriously. Now, here it is. Nehemiah is not a people person or a stuff person. He's pretty balanced. Most people, though, tilt one way or the other. Some of you are people. And some of you are spreadsheet people, right? People and stuff. Some of you are people. Like when you walk into a room, you don't see the layout, you don't see that chairs are missing, you don't see what's happening. You just see the person in the corner who's lonely and you want to go talk to them. You're a people person. When you say, we should get coffee this week, you mean it from the bottom of your heart. Other people are spreadsheet people. When they walk into a room, they see the layout, they see what's missing, they see we need some folding chairs in the corner over here, we're getting a little full. When they walk into a room or they tell someone we need coffee, that means let's text each other and schedule a date and I'll send you a calendar invite, and if you accept it, then we can make it happen, right? Because they're a little more strategic and they're a little more stuff-oriented. Now, you need both, okay? I'd love to have a moment of honesty here and see if I can survey the crowd here. I'd love for you to be able to identify if you're a people person or if you're a spreadsheet person, okay? I want you to know, like, if you've ever pulled up Excel for something that could be written on a napkin, then you're a spreadsheet person, okay? You're a stuff person. If you end your sentences when you meet someone with like, how are you really doing? Then you're probably a people person, okay? So let me hear, where's all my people? Okay? Where's all my spreadsheet people? Okay? Which group is better than the other? Yeah, whoever you are, that's right? Because if you're a people person, you're going to dread vacation with the spreadsheet person because you're going to be so scheduled and so much of an itinerary that it's 12:05, we were supposed to eat at noon, we've got to get going, and there's just stress all over the place because you got to stay on schedule, right? But if you're a spreadsheet person, you dread going on vacation with the people person because they're going to book you tickets to Mexico, but they're not ever going to get a passport. You're going to get stuck in the airport the whole time, right? Some of you, this has happened to. You let the people person run the show, and it bits you, and you're like, never again. You need both. Now, let's be clear. What is more important, people or stuff? Not a trick question. People. You answered right, okay? People are more important than stuff. There's no doubt about that. But you need people to manage the stuff so that people can be cared for properly. The people who are concerned about stuff oftentimes are concerned about people when it's all said and done. They just use stuff as a way to care about people. I had this illustration given to me some months ago. I was on the phone with a pastor friend of mine, mentor of sorts and buddy, and he had spent about 10 years at a church and then another 20 years at the same church as the lead pastor. He was on staff and he's been pastoring for a while. And he was talking to me about the early days of being at the church there. And I actually happened to be in his area. I was in Texas, and we actually got a meal together, and we were just talking and reminiscing, those sorts of things. And he was talking about the early days. The pastor that had been there for a long time, for decades before him, was a people person, just through and through. He's a bit more of a spreadsheet person. And he was telling me how he was struggling to get people to see, like, that he loved them too. He just loved them in a different way. He was just wired different. He said, I finally came up with this illustration. He said, if someone in my church had a fire at 4 a.m. and they lost everything, and their house burned down, and they're sitting on the lawn crying, watching the fire department try to put out the flames to their house. He said, both the former pastor and myself, we both would show up. We would both show up at 4 a.m. and we would be there. He said, the former pastor, he would have put his arm around them, and he would have sat there with them till the sun came up and cried with them and laughed with them and just tried to love them. He said, me, I would show up, but I would leave about 15 minutes later. But I'd come back in about 2 hours with 30 people to help clean up and to help take care of the wreckage and to try to get them back on track. He said, both of us love the people. Both of us want to help the people. We just were wired so differently that I'm organized and stuff, and he's more just being with the people, but we both want to help the people when it's all said and done. I thought, what a great window into people versus spreadsheet people, right? Those who are organized and those who are social butterflies. But they're both needed. And Nehemiah knows that he needs the people and the stuff to be able to get the job done. He needs both of them. Now, take this and apply this wherever you want, right? Apply this to your own life. You can be so stuff-oriented that no one has a good time with you, and you're miserable to be around. You can be so focused on hitting the number for your retirement goal that you never take any of that money and spend it on the people who are in your home right now to love them and to bless them and to take them on vacation and to have fun, or to bless someone else and to give it away because you got to hit that number because you got to be comfortable because that's what you're going to need for retirement. That's the number. That's it. You can be so focused on stuff that you miss there's people to enjoy the stuff with. You can also be so focused on people that you really don't care for your stuff and it hurts the people. If you're so focused on people and you're just having a good time talking all the time that you forget to get your car inspected for 4 years in a row and it's a rust bucket, but you have your 5-year-old in the vehicle and now it's no longer safe, you've been so focused on people that now your stuff isn't cared for and the people aren't safe anymore. That makes sense? The point is this. We oftentimes draw little lines of division and we categorize ourselves, and we can oftentimes think that our way is the best way. Listen, if you love people through a spreadsheet and planning, or you love people by putting your arm around them and comforting them, as long as it's all aimed at people and ultimately the glory of God, you're good. We need both. You need a balance. You need a balance in your home and your marriage. You need a balance inside of a pastoral team and staff. You need a balance inside of a church. You have to have that balance. And Nehemiah understood, I got to take inventory of the people. I got to know, now the walls are built, the gates are built. Who am I supposed to be governor of? I'm governor of this now newly minted place that now has fresh walls and some sort of security, and people are going to start moving in. Who is it that I'm responsible for? What is it that I'm responsible for? And he tries to get to the bottom of it and say, let's steward both of these things really, really well. Now, lastly, and most importantly, there's so much you can pull from this text. There's so many lessons. I struggled massively on selecting which ones to apply and which ones I had to leave out for sake of time. But I would be remiss if I didn't point that every chapter in Nehemiah, in some way, shape, or form, whispers forward to a bigger story that's beyond Nehemiah. You know, there's this moment in chapter number 6 where the people say, it is finished, and this must have been of God. Remember that in verse 15? This moment where they're like, the walls are done, it's finished. And the people that are around say, that must have been a God thing. Even that is meant to point forward to something. Even that is meant to reach redemptively forward to a moment where the Son of God will hang on a cross and say, it is finished. and even the heathen that are at the foot of the cross, murdering him and casting lots for his garments, would see what happens and say, at least one of them did, surely this man was the Son of God. It points to a moment where there's a sacrifice once and for all, where Jesus says it is finished, and people can't help but to look in awe and in wonder, even if they don't join the team, but to say, something is happening there that we can't explain. That must be God. I think that we should take Nehemiah and we should see through him. We should see through him to God not just building walls and gates, but God ultimately wanting to reach our hearts and put us in alignment with himself. God wanting to do something that wasn't so much physical but spiritual, to bring his people back to him and in unity with him and worshiping him and loving him, that God has an intention of like, there's a task and I'm going to set out to do it, and the devil's going to try to stop me, but come hell or high water, I'm going to the cross. Even if my disciples tell me I shouldn't and I'm crazy and there's no way, I'm going to do it. I'm going to finish the work. I'm going to stay faithful. I'm going to do this for them, and God's going to get glory through all of it. This should cause us to stop and to learn and to glean and to apply. Yes, but it should cause us to stop and to worship for just a little bit. That Jesus would say it is finished on our behalf, and we can say that was God.
I pray that today's message challenged and encouraged you in your walk with Christ. And if this sermon was a blessing to you, know that it was made available because of our financial partners. I want to take a moment and invite you to be a part of that tribe. I know not everyone's in a position to give, and if that's you, then please just let this broadcast be a blessing. There are no strings attached. But if God's blessed you with the ability to give, I would love for you to link arms with us and support what God is doing here. As a small way of saying thank you for your generosity, I'd love to send you a copy of my new book, The Prayer Jesus Gave. This is a guided tour through the model prayer, the Our Father, as some call it. And if you've ever felt like your prayer life could use an upgrade, I know it will be a help. You can give and receive your copy at harvesttoyou.org/give, or by mailing a donation to the address on your screen. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next Sunday.